the person behind that magazine is none other than Mr. Lokesh Singh, who is a Guyanese resident in St. Lucia, and he is a businessman as well as the Guyana consul to St. Lucia. He is the managing director and advertising of marketing services, and he's the publisher, like I said, he is the publisher of the Invest Guyana magazine 2017. So we'll use this opportunity to present to you the new magazine. Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies, Honorable Minister, Vice Chancellor, special invited guests, members of the Diaspora, ladies and gentlemen. Having heard Suresh, it made me reflect on my own lifestyle as a member of the Guyanese Diaspora, who has now been resident in St. Lucia for 37 years. Having left this country as a young man, we all went into the big wide world and we saw opportunity. The interesting part of us as Guyanese is when we see opportunity, we grab it with both hands and we run. 37 years later, I'm still being reminded and called, oh, you're talking with the Indian fellow from Guyana. 37 years later, having lived in an island called St. Lucia. Reality is that we are from this country, we have this navel string here, and we are tied to opportunities which are available here. I came here every year since I left, and I have followed the opportunities in this country. I left here having learned the art of publishing and the importance of publishing, and I refined my skills living in St. Lucia and traveling the Caribbean and further afield. I came back here, and 15 years ago I started producing Explore Guyana magazine, which, if you all know that publication, has set the standards for publishing in this country. We've added a range of titles since, and 5 years ago we started a publication called Invest Guyana, which is very much tied to what we're all doing here, which is trying to attract investment into this country. 2 years ago, we partnered with the Guyana Office for Investment, and we signed a long-term agreement where this magazine is now the official magazine of the Guyana Office of Investment, and by extension, the Ministry of Business and the Government of Guyana. This magazine has now been making the rounds internationally. We have significant demand for copies, and I'm pleased to be given the opportunity here by the Vice Chancellor to make a presentation of the 2017-18 edition to the Honourable Minister. I thank you all for the opportunity, those of you who've supported the product as editorial content, as advertising possibilities, in making the project a reality. So at this point in time, I'd like to invite the Honourable Minister, the CEO of Go Invest, and the Vice Chancellor, Professor Suresh Narayan, and the Chairman, the MC. What we will do here is we will present the first copy to the Honourable Minister, and we will present copies to the other members here. So I'll ask Owen Verwey to present the first copy to the Honourable Minister. He'll present a copy to the Chairman or Vice Chancellor. And I'll do the honours in presenting to the Chairman and Professor Suresh. Thank you very much. Copies of this magazine are available in this room, and everyone present here will be able to get a copy before you leave. At this point, Please also note that the magazine is also online. At this point, I'd like to invite Honourable Minister Gaskin to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singh. It will be a few words. I'm not going to keep you holding for too long. Professor Narayan has never fully forgiven me for some insensitive remarks that I made a few years ago about one of the products that he had invented. I have since withdrawn the remarks, and I try whenever possible to make up for it. So I want to endorse his comments about the Rupununi Essence product. I wash my face with it almost every day. This face that you're seeing here, and I find it refreshing, I find it a wonderful product. I've even managed to convince my wife to use it, and she has started using it, and she realizes the value of the product. She really likes the product, so full endorsement for that product. Also, I want to relate this magazine here to the village that Professor Narayan mentioned that had, or that never had, and hadn't seen a medic in 5 years. Those are the disparities, the inequalities that our government seeks to reduce and to eliminate. And we have realized a long time ago that we can only do that through the jobs and opportunities that are created for those with limited opportunities by private enterprise, by private investments. And this magazine here is the second the second edition of the collaboration between Go Invest and AMS. And I have not yet had a read of it, because I know you probably think that these events are usually staged, and when the magazine is presented to me, I probably had it for weeks and, you know, was instrumental in its creation. But no, I saw it for the first time today. I have no doubt that it will meet the usual high standards and high quality that the previous publications that I have seen from AMS have achieved. And Mr. Vorway knows me well enough. That's Mr. Owen Vorway, Chief Executive Officer of Go Invest. He knows me well enough to know that when I do read this magazine, and if it does not meet those standards, he will receive an email from me. So, but what I wanted to say is that this is the magazine that the government is using to promote Guyana as a good and competitive investment destination. It is a treasure trove of information. It has interesting articles on businesses, existing businesses. There are advertisements, there is other information and data here. Like I said, I haven't completely read it, so I'm just sort of scanning through and guessing. But I want you to take this magazine, I want you to read it, and I want you to relate this magazine to the unfortunate community that that Professor Narayan mentioned in his speech, because it is through private investments, it is through our promotion of Guyana in publications such as this one, that we are going to overcome those challenges, that communities such as those are going to be taken property in Guyana. Thank you very much, and I want to thank the Vice Chancellor for allowing us these few minutes to do some business at his event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. That brings to close this lunch session. I'll now turn the microphone over to the Vice Chancellor to advise us on the proceedings for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
A round of applause to Mr. Chet Bowling from the Planning Committee for managing us through this session. Given the time of hour that we now face, let me recommend the following modification going forward. We shall forego the session that should have been there led by Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Greenwich. We shall go immediately into the second set of panels, which were supposed to be at 2:30. This is an opportunity for those panels to do what in parts of Guyana we call talk quick. Because I'd like to have us return here promptly at 4:15. And at 4:15, we're going to have the second ministerial roundtable, and we shall incorporate foreign affairs into that roundtable. So thank you for your endurance, for forbearance. I'd like to advise that we move quickly into the two sessions that were supposed to begun at 2:30. We'll have those sessions and resume in this room at 3:15. 4:15. 4:15, thank you very much, 4:15. So, up and to your sessions, return here at 4:15.
Ladies and gentlemen, is this John? My name is Wazir Mohammed and I am the moderator for this session. We have three presentations. We have an hour. I would advise presenters, I would not to go above 15 minutes. If you can stay below 15 minutes, it would be best so that we can have enough time for discussion. And so I'm not going to take up much more time in introductions. All the introductions are in the booklet. I'm going to invite Mr. Lear Matthews to make his presentation, and he will be followed by Mr. Lewis, by Dr. Lewis, and then by my colleague here, Jillian. Lear, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon all.
Good afternoon.
Okay, and I'm honored to be here. In the interest of time, I'm going to read from my notes mostly. The title of my presentation is Hometown Associations and Diaspora Engagement, Challenges and Emerging Role in Nation Building. Let me begin by saying that tertiary educational institutions such as the University of Guyana have a mandate to provide relevant research and service to support sustainable development. By sponsoring this conference, University of Guyana has expressed an understanding of the need for multi-sector collaboration and created an opportunity for open dialogue to unravel some of the tensions among stakeholders, including the government, diaspora, and local communities. I would argue that there are two underlying premises or assumptions of this conference. One, the diaspora is potentially a valued contributor to nation building. And two, that the diaspora wants to be engaged. Here I'm reminded of a recent comment by a former well-known Guyanese news editor, and I quote, "We should not bank too heavily on an unending outreach to the land of our birth. The diaspora is a slow diminution." This is someone who is of Guyanese birth, but lives in the diaspora. My presentation on hometown associations hopefully will provide some thoughts about these assumptions as they relate to English-speaking Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean diaspora. Much of the information for this presentation is drawn from my own research on the topic. Hometown associations are organizations formed by immigrants from the same village, town, community, or shared institution to support their home country while maintaining a sense of identity in the adopted home. And these organizations have a sort of a twofold function. One is to assist the community at home, and the other one has to do with identity and internetting and interacting in the adopted country. For decades, these associations have been popular among immigrants from Mexico, Central America, India, Kenya, and Ghana. However, over the last two decades, there's been a rapid increase in the number of these associations, especially among Guyanese immigrants in North America. In 2002, there were approximately 183 such organizations, Guyanese organizations in North America, and by 2016, there were more than 360, most of which are 501c3 organizations, meaning they're certified as nonprofits. And that number is growing. Currently, I'm compiling a list of these organizations in North America, and every other week there's another one added. And you should hear the names of some of these organizations. Very interesting. These associations provide a social network outlet for members and a vehicle for diaspora philanthropy, becoming the basis for an emerging nonprofit sector. The activities of these hometown associations, in my judgment, are framed by three intersecting components: economic, emotional or personal, and cultural. Thousands of Caribbean immigrants participate in these organizations as financial members or supporters of fundraising events. The tendency to remain connected to the home country through HTAs seems to be motivated by, one, the felt need to give back, and we're going to talk about this concept of give back in a minute. B, as part of a plan to return home after retirement, and C, the desire to facilitate the well-being of future generations. When we talk to folks who are members of these organizations, these are some of the reasons they give for being in these organizations. Hometown associations provide an effective mechanisms for giving back. At the same time, there appears to be some ambivalence on the part of members of the diaspora to resettle or invest in the home country for various social and economic reasons, many of which have been discussed so far in this conference. Instead, people can contribute from afar through HTAs. For some, this choice allows control of their resources, selecting the local development projects they would support, and the belief that they are better able to help, financially or otherwise, from abroad, avoiding the frustration of dealing with actual or perceived socio-political inconveniences at home if they decide to resettle. Hometown associations are faced with a number of challenges. Some of these challenges are internal to the organization and the management of the hometown associations, which includes succession. It's very difficult to recruit new members of these organizations. One of the interesting things that's happening with these organizations is that the executive members are aging out. Yes. And it's a sort of a whole me lose me thing. Okay, so we want this organization to continue, but we don't want to let these people who we know nothing, they didn't start it, they're going to ruin it. So it's a sort of whole me lose me thing. But many of them are tired. They're retirees, they want to continue the programs, but it's very difficult. So it's going to be a crisis whereby many of these organizations across the board, they are aging out. And so they recycle the executive positions. The secretary may be president at one time and secretary for not 2 years or whatever. So that's a very big problem, succession. Some of the other problems include lack of confidence in the government, the local government, to expeditiously and equitably disperse goods and services provided by HTAs. And as a result, many organizations prefer to interact directly with their counterpart groups in the communities in the homeland. They tend to liaise with local organizations such as nonprofits and churches to implement their projects. Among the most successful HTAs are those whose representatives come to the country periodically or have local organization representatives who are committed to the organizational goals, or they have connections. The perceived motives of the government may be a factor in shaping relationship between the diaspora and the home country. There is a view, and this was pointed out this morning, that governments in the Caribbean actively reach out to diaspora organizations and communities for funding and other forms of support only just prior to national elections. This may cause a level of institutional mistrust, leading to a kind of engagement inertia. On the diaspora side, some people do not trust the honesty of these organizations. Is what they can do with all the money they're making. You hear that sometimes. And also, an interesting problem, there's alleged, 5 minutes, there's alleged unauthorized personal use of organizational tax exemptions and duty-free concessions by individual HTA members. This is something that emerged recently. The positive outcomes of helping families, local institutions, and communities generated by HTA activities are clearly evident. However, the tensions between returning immigrants and non-immigrants could have a negative effect on the efforts to collaborate between HTAs and local communities. Let's see, I just want to deal with this concept of give back. The idea of give back, which is a prominent reason that people give for joining these organizations, the idea of give back or giving back to the home country is an attractive motivation for many HTA supporters. However, giving back is organic, stimulated by personal or emotional attribution. Not only does it connote giving back for free, but it has been used as a framework for diaspora engagement and could also be a veiled policy position. We need to think about that. There are many examples of this. Another question I would like to ask: does involvement of the HTAs foster development or create dependency? HTAs have increased their role from charity assistance to contributing significantly to the institutional and community development. Nevertheless, unintended consequences must be noted. Efforts to achieve economic self-sufficiency may be compromised by the position of virtual unrestricted resources from overseas. Furthermore, where governments encourage support from HTAs, the intent may not only be to complement social development, but to absolve them from full responsibility of providing critical aid to their constituents. We need to think of that. Indeed, the sending of resources assists with infrastructural or economic development and help people cope, but it can also raise expectations to unachievable levels and affect efforts to become self-sufficient. I would just like to close by presenting the framework of a model to improve the diaspora engagement, the engagement capacity of HTAs. The first is to identify goals and capacities. The next one would be to know your diaspora. This involves the need to recognize and learn about HTA, their location, type of services they provide, track record, resources, limitations and skills, and so on. In other words, it's important to understand what the diaspora is all about. What's their capacity, what's their makeup, and what they're interested in what services they're interested in providing. Build trust, and this is an area that's been critical, and it's talked about a lot. That there are a lot of tensions between the diaspora and the home country, whether it's the government or the local communities, and that trust is not there. So we need to build trust, and there are many ways to do that. I have some suggestions. I'd like to close with 3 points made by Hometown Association members at several forums I attended recently in New York City. I'm just a messenger here. In order to ensure the success of the Caribbean diaspora engagement, there must be a well-crafted diaspora engagement policy. 2, some HTAs are not qualified to do the work they purport to do and are paid for their voluntary services. HTAs should be recommended by other reputable organizations. Some representatives are good talkers, they said, and they may have connections. And I quote one member, "I am so tired of some of these organizations that have no accountability." These are some of the issues that are raised at HTAs. And often our work is not acknowledged. Thank you.
I'm going to I know that many of you will have questions. We will reserve those for the end. I'm going to move straight away into the other presentation by Mr. Leonard.
Thank you. Good afternoon, folks. My presentation will be on one particular hometown association, COFONA, Council of Friends of New Amsterdam, and I know that the Diaspora Engagement Conference has as its theme, Dreaming Diaspora Engagement, Doing Diaspora Engagement. The emphasis on this association is on the doing. So this presentation will focus on what COFONA has been doing and its impact on the community, and to some extent at the individual level. For those of you who were not at the 50th Jubilee celebration and did not have a chance to see the COFONA band, I'd like to introduce them at this time. Let me have to activate it from here. Kofona band that you just saw is the outcome of a visit that my wife had in 2008. And she came back home and said she really enjoyed her visit immensely. The problem was she was somewhat taken aback by the conditions of the township, New Amsterdam. And so she called a few friends, and in 2010, in September, we had a forum on New Amsterdam. We invited the mayor of New Amsterdam up to New York, and for my 60th birthday, my gift was to hold a forum on the township of New Amsterdam. By October, we formed a 501c3 non-profit organization, and we made sure that we had a mission statement that involved one primary thing: collaboration. We wanted to make sure that we were collaborating with individuals, with organizations, with government agencies, so that we wanted to make sure we fulfill our goals despite whichever government was in place. One of the first organizations to help was Guyana, that supplied the first set of uniforms for the band. We also worked with the Borby's Children Resource Network that supplies scholarships for students who are taking CXC exams in the township of New Amsterdam. So central to our goal and mission has been collaboration with organizations. Since our start in 2010, 2011, we have donated hundreds of thousands of books to public libraries, high schools, the prison system, and other community organizations. To promote literacy in the township, we partner with the Marva Gordon Family Foundation that has a summer literacy program in New Amsterdam. In 2030, we celebrated the 250th anniversary of the Borby Slave Rebellion, that significant event that had such an impact on the nation as a whole. So we've held a number of events that speaks to the fact that we are working on the ground with organizations to make a difference. We donated supplies to the hospital center, to the hospital in New Amsterdam. We contributed the freezer to the Presbyterian Community Center in New Amsterdam to help them with the empowerment sustainability efforts. We also are involved with the New Amsterdam prisons, where we involve the faculty at City College to design a literacy program to integrate the 3 barrels of books we sent to the prison a few months ago to make sure that the prisoners were trained in literacy development. Currently, there are 54 band members involved in the band that you just saw. Last summer, it peaked at 84. And of the 54, 23 are females, 31 are males. They practice daily. They practice daily, every day. And each month they play about 3 or 4 times a year at national events, local events, regional events. The band has made an impact on the social and cultural life of the township of New Amsterdam. Right now, the band is the organization is collaborating with the Office of the Presidential Advisor on Youth Empowerment. 45 members of the band have been involved in a 10-month music training pilot project administered by that office, where that office has supplied a facilitator and a coordinator and 2 music instructors for the program. And that program will continue until the end of 2011. Also, the organization, the agency started to involve the band members in the militia program that they have every summer, where they train them on the leadership program. The objectives of this engagement is to resuscitate interest and love among youth for music, to contribute to the development of Guyana's entertainment industry, to provide a cultural alternative for youths to make better use of their time, to reduce susceptibility of youths becoming involved in delinquent activities, and to create a feeder system for music bands across the country. Recently, we did a survey of the band to find out what impact the band and their involvement has had on the band members. 67% of the band members responded to the survey, so that's 35 out of the 54 active members, and those who were not able to respond were participating in the CXC exams on that day or in the end of term examinations. Of the response, 13 of them were involved in the band 3+ years, another 11 were involved less than 3 years, and the rest were involved less than 1 year. So, in other words, about 1/3 of the band members are apparently at the same level of their length of time being involved. That has a challenge for making sure that they are all trained to the same level. When we asked them what was the reason for them joining the band, 23 of them said they joined the band, 23 of them, or 66%, said they joined the band because they wanted to play music. So they were highly motivated to be involved in the band. 8 of them were encouraged by their parents to join, and 5 of them were encouraged by their friends. What impact did the band have on their lives personally? Most of them said it improved their social skills. More than that, it also made them more interested in a career. And to a lesser extent, it created a greater self-awareness, and it improved their school work as well. What personal benefits they gained from being in the band? 25% said they developed their musical abilities. 17% said it offered them opportunities to travel. 17 of them said they benefit by working together. They value the time they spend working together. Also, they develop their study skills as well. Major career interests. 7 of the members intend to join the Army, and that's because already 17 of the band members have already joined the GDF Army. And so at the end of each year, there's an intake of these band members into the GDF. So there's high employment, prospects of employment for these youths after their stint in the band. But what was interesting is their interest in other areas. 3 of them would like to be in the medical field, 3 would like to practice law, 3 would like to practice engineering, and 3 would like to be in the police force. 2 would like to be teachers, and 2 would be trained technicians. What I found interesting was the next slide, in which the vast diversity of career interests was displayed. In our days, when we look forward to what kind of job you wanted, it was either teaching, law, or medicine. These kids, they would like to be a nursing, mechanic, flight attendant, music teacher, accountant, bank manager, pilot, photography, fireman, singer, electrician. So the diversity of the career interest is very, very interesting for these young people. How are they committed to the band? 66% said they are definitely committed. They'll remain in the band even after they have finished their high school. Those who would not remain in the band it was because they may not be in the area any longer. Here are some of their explicit statements of what they thought about their experiences in the band. Well, from my own experience, the Kofona Band Corps has made my life different in many, many ways by building my self-esteem and encouraging me to follow up music, more especially in singing and also encouraging others. The band helps me to be brave and adhere to rules and responsibilities as looking out for one another and abiding by rules help me to be respectful. But look at this one. Well, I was a bad boy. And when I joined the band, I changed my ways. So the experience in the band is having a tremendous impact on the values of the members of the band. What's the takeaway? The specific findings from the band core service suggest that band members' expectations in music preparation are being met. They are satisfied and appreciative of the overall experiences of the band. Those experiences are positively impacted on the values and career interests, and the band should expand to include our areas in the arts. What we like them to do is to make sure that we follow up with these band members, that we not only have them practicing every day, but that we engage in their lives even after they have left the band. So we are committed to these youngsters even after they have finished their stint in the band. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Leonard Lewis, and I know that he had much more to say. I would now hand the microphone over to Jillian, who will be making her presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Thanks very much. How long do I have? 10 minutes? 15? Okay. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully, I'll give you a taste of the role of a hometown association and give you some experiences that we've had working with hometown associations over the last 8 years or so, and feature the particular hometown association in Haiti. So, first, what are hometown associations? They're typically created by migrants in their community of residence, where they are integrating and working and collaborating in projects with their community of their country of heritage. And basically they work on common issues and projects to really help their hometown association, their hometown itself. One of the most, I would say, famous and also effective hometown association that we've worked with is one in Mexico, which is the 3-for-1 project, where for every dollar that the hometown association basically collects and fundraises, their government gives them $3 to that. So they're exponentially able to expand their scope of projects and really help their hometown communities. Now, hometown associations have grown in number. These numbers are a bit old, and they're taken from the Inter-American Dialogue from a consultant we work with, Manuel Orozco. But in Mexico, for instance, there are over 3,000. There were over 3,000. They're probably closer to 5. Filipinos are about 1,500 Ghanaian organizations. But these numbers are taken from 2007. Since then, there has been no real study of hometown associations globally to really update these numbers. Let's talk about the strength of hometown associations and also the challenges. And Lear talked about and touched on some of these already. Some of the strengths are there is a personal link. So you are from New Amsterdam, as the gentleman just presented. You work on projects that are close and dear to your heart in New Amsterdam. The Berbecians will work on projects in Berbice. It doesn't matter where you live now. So there's a personal link. There's a cultural affinity. There's also the fact that you know your hometown and you know your community leaders in your hometown and in your country of birth. So it is very important to collaborate collaborate with those community leaders who are on the ground, who are still in that community. One of the strengths also is that you will have experience in the particular sector or the types of projects. For instance, if I know agriculture, I'm not going to go and put in a technology project. So you typically will work on projects where you have that skill or you know the sector. Also, you're able to mobilize experts. And again, Lear talked about this already, the age-in factor in hometown associations. This is why it's important to get the second generation and third generation diaspora involved. So the children, and your grandchildren, you get them involved in an early age. And this is one of the things that we are working with, especially with the Haitian hometown associations, to do. Sorry. When we look at some of the challenges of HDAs, they're really unknown and ignored by the international community or their governments. And most governments, they take some time to basically collaborate with the Haitian or hometown associations, I should say, on a whole. The second thing is they are volunteer organizations. So people are doing this on their own time, with their own resources and with their own financial challenges. This is not a paid job. So you really have to have a passion for your hometown and for the type of work that you're doing. Sometimes, especially in places like Haiti, there are more disasters than the diaspora could bear. For instance, there was the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, and then they had the hurricane last year with Matthew. So, you know, a lot of Haitians are just so overwhelmed with all of these, disasters that they can't fundraise and they can't help the folks in their hometown fast enough. You know, we have our own mini disasters too, but we don't have the type of disasters that they're having. There's also the absence of disaster preparedness and the recovery plan. So that affects it. Also, there's no communication or information about programs, so a lot of folks don't know about some of these hometown associations and the work they do. Now, how do you evaluate the effectiveness? And again, my colleagues touched on this a little bit. There are 4 components. You look at the ownership, and again, make sure that the community members are participating in this. Someone talked about, I believe it was, someone talked about bringing the mayor of the city. Frequently, these hometown associations work with the mayors in their community and their staff and with other community leaders on the ground. This is most important both from an ownership perspective, a correspondence perspective for the implementation of your project, and also for the sustainability and to replicate the project. Because let's face it, if it's successful, you want to do more of it. You don't want to stop there. Also, the whole point is to make this sustainable so that when you do something, your community is sustainable. They're not looking for those remittances that are coming, and they're not dependent on it, because we all know that the diaspora abroad also face their own challenges. We lose jobs, we change jobs, we have financial pressures. So those remittances, they're not an ever-flowing bucket of money going. For any HTA, the primary activity is fundraising. It's always about fundraising, and it's focused on, most of the time, promotion of health or education. There's some social, but it's mostly health and education. It's the heavy need projects. Just to focus on one particular, because we don't really have time for more, one hometown association that's working in a particular region of Haiti. They currently support 15 schools in 9 communities. They've awarded scholarships to 4,000 students, trained 168 teachers, provided assistance to 225 households, and constructed 2 schools. That is one hometown association. I mean, this is not over a month or a year. This is over probably about a 5-year period. But hometown associations can make a difference. They are effective. Just to go through their project, very simply a chicken coop project. And this was to bring sustainability and engage the community in self-reliance. How is it funded? A combination of funds. From diaspora donations, loans from USAID, UNICEF Social Business, and the total they finance was $291,000. Excuse me. The project consisted in the creation of a broiler farm social enterprise, which would be used to sustain the operation of a school. Excuse me. How long did it take? It took about 16 months to implement. And in consultation with the local community, they came up with the whole chicken coop concept. This was not done in isolation. What were the challenges? Lack of training and capacity building. Capacity building is big. In every project we do with hometown associations, you have to build capacity. There has to be the ability to go on and do more work like this, replicate it, and continue doing this type of work without the hand-holding. There was also communication, which was a barrier, because what happens a lot in these communities is they are sort of NGO projects all the time, bombarding them, so they become very tired and insensitive to that. So it was difficult to get the stakeholders engaged at the beginning because, you know, their basic response was another project, you know, another, you know, sort of implementation. And so there was basically sort of tiredness and overwhelmedness there. And also the challenges were also engaging the community more actively and adjusting to their level of comprehension for that particular area. When we look at lessons learned, we have to look more, we need to look further than just monetary terms. In this project, they basically looked at the monetary terms, and they failed to recognize what mattered to the beneficiary community specifically. Their focus should have been on investing in and improving what was already relevant in the community, and instead of doing the chicken coop, maybe it might have been an agriculture type project. So that was a lesson learned there. In terms of recommendations to wrap up, what we recommend going forward for hometown associations and everyone involved in the diaspora working with hometown associations and also government organizations is to recognize the capacity of volunteer diaspora organizations and provide resources for the interventions. We find a lot of governments just don't recognize how important, resourceful, and how effective hometown associations can be. In terms of crisis, they are the first to respond. It happened with the 2010 earthquake, it happened with the Hurricane Matthew. The diaspora were there on the ground faster than USAID and all these NGOs possibly can. We also recommend opening the procurement process to the diaspora for hiring opportunities. Hire from these hometown associations. They have the experience, and when you have contracting jobs that involve communities on the ground, get your HTAs involved. Include the diaspora in communication channels, events, and cluster activities. This is not done enough right now. And develop long-term economic development programs with the diaspora and the local population, because in the end, the diaspora is there for the long term. They're the ones who will go first and stay way longer than anyone else. NGOs will go later, and then once they feel that they've done a little bit, they pull out. And thank you very much. That's it.
Well, at least we have, we should thank our presenters for sticking to time, because we do have a lot to discuss. And I would open the floor for questions. Before I do that, I want to recognize George Abrams, who has been involved in one of Guyana's long-standing hometown association, the Committee for the Improvement of Buxton, which they've done tremendous work.
Could you give me an opportunity to develop more on hometown association?
I could give you 1 minute.
The hometown association concept is a new one. When I went to America about 40 years ago, I started the Guyana National Association, of which I was the president, and we applied for 501c3. Since then, Simbox has obtained 501c3. The Cricket Club has obtained 501c3. Guyana has obtained 501c3. And the JBMSI, all of them have obtained 501c3 through my application. I'm a CPA and also a master's in taxation. So I'm able to do all of those things. The advantage of obtaining a 501c3 is that the donors can get a tax deduction on their taxes once they itemize. There's also the sales tax exemption and also their membership dues that they can get exemption from. And there's so many benefits of becoming a 501c3 in the United States. You know, it will take a lot of time for me to explain the benefits. But the smaller you are as a 501c3, the less you're required to do in filing that 990. Now the IRS has determined that rather than filing a 990 or a 990-EZ, you can file a 990-N to be able to say what you're doing during the year.
Thank you, George. Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, this is for Dr. Matthews. Imagine that most of these hometown associations have their own unique characteristics, and I believe in the absence of a blueprint for how to run HTAs, have you found that most of them are organized for the benefit of their members in the home country, the members in their adopted country? Or do you find that they're more designed to provide a product or a service back to the homeland? And if so, how is that delivered?
We're going to take 5 questions in the first round, yes. The back.
I just want to comment on something that Lear said, because I'm part of a 501c3. We are not a specific hometown, but we try to target different projects here in Guyana. And one of the things we have a problem with is how do we pass the 501c3 onto the next generation? How do we make that nexus? We have a few younger people that have joined us, but they do things very differently, and we're getting older. The other thing is financing. We've been doing it through dues and 2 functions, but we need to have fundraising using the internet and other types of activities. So yeah, I agree with you, and that's one of the challenges, because as we get older and pass on, that nexus is lost. The other thing we want to do is to come home and visit, see the conditions, see the areas, and bring the younger people so they have some sense of what Guyana means to us. And since, you know, some of them are Guyanese, some of them are second generation, then they can also become part of it.
One of the things that...
Could you hold your response?
Mr. Chairman, just a reminder that the Vice Chancellor asked us to be back in the room at 4:15.
All right, I know. Kimani?
Yeah, just quickly, sorry it's going to Blair, you're very popular. While you were mentioning people accusing the members of the hometown associations of converting monies to their own private use, it resonated with me because I belong to one that had the same kind of charge level. I'm wondering how popular this is, how often this kind of thing happens. It seems to me as though it's a particularly damaging accusation. What to do about it? I have written down transparency, and then you mentioned that somebody in one of those associations talked about accountability. Are we onto something here about trying to tackle that particular issue?
Mr. Roberts?
I just want to, I just want to see a different kind of approach to this whole question of the diaspora and hometown associations. I mean, I think the question that you asked us, I think Liam might have got it from me, because I know what this whole question was about. But what I want to say is this: I think in the past when we've done it, we looked at a charity organization. You left a backward country, you went to a developed country,
and you're doing them a good turn. You're helping out, you send back the money, barrel, everything and so on, you have to pay the church, and plus you got to do. Now, I think what's happening now, and this is why Fati was trying to grapple with it, the things are being reversed. What's happening now, Guyanese are telling you, yeah, I'm doing something out there. Guyanese are telling you that, especially in the last few years, when money was flowing quite nicely. And so what happens that, and now we are about to get oil, I think we really have to now see a different kind of model. Because this will send back 200 barrels of sand and a couple cents is not going to do anything in terms of what Guyanese want. So I think we've got to look at it from a governmental point of view, to my mind. And in the sense that I think what happened is that a man like Trump, he's trying to deport people from the country who he doesn't want. We should be now having a program to bring out the people that we want, rather than we trying to reverse the blame trade. So it's we have to look at different models so we can look at it. And the other thing I just want to say is that I think along with all of that, if you don't get a governmental policy, we can talk as much as we want about sending home a couple of things. It does not work because unless the government creates an enabling environment, we will never be able to fully grasp exactly. So the question is, don't you think we should try to look at a different model as against just talking about giving from that side?
Right. Alison?
Actually, Kimani talked about what I wanted to address, the aging out of those that have been in leadership. There's a resistance of the aging out folks to have the knowledge transfer passed to those of us who are not as young as they think we are, but who have ideas and capabilities. Desmond just mentioned about finding new ways to raise funds. I am very active in raising funds, and I do out-of-the-box things. I do things that are not common or that are not familiar to the aging out group, but it's hard for me to get that message through without them feeling, oh, she just won't come and take over. This girl just won't do this. You know? It's a setting in their ways. How do we change their persona? How do we change their perception? You know, you train your children to go out on their own to do for themselves. We can't grow if you're not going to allow us. And we can't keep bullying, because that's all you're going to label us as, bullies and young upstarts, when we have the same interests and concerns. We want to preserve what we have, what you've taught us, and pass it on.
I'm going to take 2 more questions quickly. We have like 6 minutes.
I'm just piggybacking on some of what Alice is saying, but I'm going to flip it. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that the younger folks lack the discipline to really carry through with the objectives and the mission statements of organizations. So my charge to the older hometown associations would be to come up with a blueprint, that theory, that they can share with the younger associations and associations with younger members, so that they understand the ethics of being a part of that organization.
One more, here.
Thank you. I really want to support the term in terms of changing the model, because when you look at the society, our society, the young people, right now they're struggling about finding jobs and they're turning to crime. There are several groups, there are several gangs, and I'm thinking if these home society associations can actually look a little at their model in terms of empowering young people to have them develop and know themselves, learn their culture, have good ethics, so that we will have a better future.
All right. I'll give each presenter 2 minutes to respond.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yes,
anyway, but since the theme of the young people and succession seems to be one of the major themes, one of my dreams is to have, not dream, but something that I'm planning in New York with some of these organizations, is to have a conversation between the generations, an open forum. Sometimes we assume that the young people are interested in what we are interested in. But there's a lot of literature now on the 3rd generation immigrants, and what they're saying is that young people have a different cultural and different identity space. And sometimes we assume that they're interested in the old home, the grandparents' culture, and that kind of thing. So there's definitely that gap. So I think we should begin with some sort of dialogue. So that might be a way to start. As far as the accountability is concerned, and individual ACA members utilizing the tax exempt and so on, it's not that widespread, but I think it was serious enough for the past president of Guyana, when he was visiting New York. He raised this as an issue. And as a matter of fact, there was a couple of questions that were asked about, acknowledging the work of Hometown Association and so on. And his only response was that some of the individual members try to use the tax exempt for their to take in personal items. And he was very upset. I mean, he was very passionate about that. And he didn't respond to anything else. Okay, so, I don't think it's that widespread, but it happens. Okay. Where are we going now? First question? Repeat your question.
Yeah, basically, are they organized for themselves, or are they organized to provide a service or a product back to the homeland?
I think they're organized to provide, to help people bring things back to the homeland. But a lot of people are attached to these organizations because of the desire to give back. They want to give back. One of the problems, however, because these organizations are voluntary, one of the problems they have is the management of these organizations. Because it's voluntary, and a lot of these folks they're not accountants, they're not business people, and so a lot of times they don't know how to run these organizations. It's voluntary, and sometimes they don't keep up with the requirements of what an organization would do. And then sometimes there are a lot of personality differences, and because they're not committed to the organization in a monetary sense, they either leave the organization or they try to sabotage the organization. So a lot of that is going on. Sometimes it's out in the open, and it's sometimes very embarrassing. And we know, folks from New York know what I'm talking about. All right. So it's complicated. It's very complicated. But they're really providing an important function, and we need to rethink the model that we're using, definitely.
What I like to touch on is the model. What COFONA has done is it's in the process of creating a new model, as a matter of fact, because the band that you saw, that band is being targeted to be the model national youth band in the country. That band is being supported by the Office of the Advisor to the President. And that's why there's a training program involving the GDF instructors going on right now in New Amsterdam. That band has already visited Linden to start a band in Linden. So that band is going to be a model for the country, supported by the government. We didn't start doing that. We started as a Hometown Association giving back by donating books. But then when we started the band, it aligned with the objectives of the government. And so that's one way how you can institutionalize projects that you are involved in, so that after a while, you do not bear the full burden of carrying out the program or the project. Secondly, in terms of transition from the older generation to the younger, my niece, who I brought once again, she claims to be a Guyanese. She's born in the US, just graduated with a degree in economics from Syracuse, and she's back here again.
Thank you.
We're running out of time, so I'm going to make this quick. Fundraising, those are definite challenges, but there are monies available. There are millions of dollars that the NGOs in the States, USAID, PADF, IOM, they give money. You just need to tap into that. You need to learn how to write grants, and we do a lot of training programs, capacity building programs. that teach hometown associations how to tap into those monies. There is money out there. Yes, you can do your little fundraising activities, but there's loads of money out there. You just have to do the research and get to it, number one. Number two, in terms of the fraud and corruption, yes, you may not be accountants, and yes, you may not be, business owners and know how to run an organization, but you find them. You go out and find them because you have to run your organization in a proper way. Most of the hometown organizations that we work with, they do have an accountant who's their treasurer, and before you can tap into those funds, believe me, you have to have governance in your organization and prove it. You can't just go in and grab this money and, sort of have a little slipshod organization and management. You have to set up, you have to get a chartered accountant as a treasurer, and you do have to have your audited statements and your financial stability there. In terms of the blueprint being different, it is different. I mean, it is no longer about sending barrels home and those types of things. Basically, it's about implementing projects that will make the community sustainable. That's what it's all about. It's not about sending things home anymore. And folks do give back. The majority of hometown associations are not there for themselves. They are there for their hometown. That's it. Thank you very much.
All right, I endorse everything that has been said, except that we have more than revenue to raise. We have ourselves and our bodies that we must put on the line at home.